I call to order a meeting of the Finance Committee for Wednesday, March 12, 2025. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I'd like to thank everyone for being here tonight. I'd like to thank everyone at home who is watching. A couple announcements that I make every other time. I'm going to make them again. If you could make sure your phone's silenced, should be a little switch on the side, hopefully. If you could silence your phone, that would be great. The other thing is this meeting is being shown live on local broadcast channel SMAC and recorded for future internet entertainment. And I'm looking for a motion to open the public hearing.
Second.
Elliot made the motion. Carolyn is a second on that. Okay, all in favor? Aye. All opposed? Hearing none, public hearing is now open. First thing on the agenda here, we have Article 49, looking for a motion.
I'd like to make a motion to take Article 49 off the table.
Second.
Okay, Carolyn made the motion. Chet, second on that. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Hearing none. Article 49 is off the table and up for discussion. Do we have someone to present Article 49? This is the tax repayment program, Article 49.
Yes, sir. Mr. Chairman, through you to the board, we're withdrawing, or at least tabling, that article. I did some research this morning with DOR, and that article requires a bylaw change, which was not considered when the motion and the article were drafted. So we'll be withdrawing that and tabling it until, I guess that's two different things. We'll be tabling it until the fall town meeting.
Okay, so Article 49 will be withdrawn?
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much. Do we have any questions from the committee on Article 49 tax repayment program? Okay, questions or comments from the public? Article 49 tax repayment program, which was just discussed as being scheduled to be withdrawn. Hearing none. Next item on the agenda, we're going to go to the Norfolk County Agricultural High School. What page was that? Was that the question? I do not know the page number. 45. Thank you very much, Cynthia. As members of the committee probably know, you have received an email that showed the assessments on this here with the dollar amounts per student, the in-county tuition rates at $3,300, capital expenses of $1,701 for an in-county tuition rate of $5,001 per student. In grades 9, you have 2 students here now. Grade 10, you have 1. Grade 11, you have 1. Grade 12, there are 2. According to this document, 5 students have applied for admission. So do we have any questions from the committee on the Norfolk County Agricultural High School? Okay, hearing none. Oh, Mark.
I don't know if anybody's here from it.
Apparently not, but
I was going to wonder what the actual enrollment was per each grade.
what was the question?
How much enrollment per each grade? If you could ask them. And if we could
Yeah, right now, according to the according to the document, right now, grade 9 there are 2 students. Grade 10 there is 1.
No, the actual how many ninth graders and how many ninth graders in the school?
Oh, how many are there?
Ninth graders, yes.
That I don't know, but according to this, Stoughton has 2 there in 9th grade. I don't know how many are there total.
All right. If we can get an email, find out from whoever, that'd be great.
Yeah, we can try to find out how many students are in total in 9th grade there.
Well, ninth, 10th, 11th.
Yeah, we can find
12th.
out. We can.
Just to see how many students we have.
Oh. Is that total, all grades?
All grades.
Okay, 600 total.
Right, but it usually fluctuate like per grade.
Well, I guess 5 students have applied from Stoughton for the upcoming year.
All right.
All right, any other questions on the Norfolk County Agricultural High School portion of the education budgets? Hearing none, questions or comments from the public? Cynthia, please identify yourself for the record.
Cynthia Walsh, 1096 Park Street. Is there anyone that's here actually from the school?
No.
Well, my comment would be, this is a very good school, and I am shocked at how few students from Stoughton are availing themselves of the opportunity. Is it because of transportation? In the past, there was transportation provided. Is there still?
I'm not sure if there's transportation provided. I've heard there is, but I honestly don't know.
No, it's just, it is a vocational school, and the small engine repair, floral arrangements, and running a floral shop. Granted, there isn't a lot of call in Stoughton for agricultural uses, but they also have a program to learn to assist in a veterinary practice. There's still some viable options there. It's not just learning to milk cows and slop the hogs. So I am disappointed at the low enrollment. I'm also disappointed that no one from the school is here.
All right, thank you very much for that. Any other, Carolyn?
Just to answer questions, there are, as of this year enrolled, there are 152 ninth graders, 154 10th graders, 145 11th graders, and 146 12th graders, according to the DESE website.
All right, thank you very much for that, Carolyn. Any other questions, comments from the public on the Norfolk County Agricultural High School portion of the education budget? Hearing none. Next, we'll go to the Southeastern Regional High School. And I believe we have someone here to discuss this. Yes. But use the microphone, make sure the light's green. That way everyone at home can hear you.
In the email you sent us, you had the regional, I assume regional school, which was Southeast. It actually is the Aggie. It's not the regional school.
There are two.
Right. There's the Aggie in your one email, and then the regional school is the Norfolk Agricultural High School.
There is the Southeastern Regional High School, and then there's also the Norfolk County Agricultural High School, which are two different schools.
Right. But I can't, it's not in the email.
They're all in, they were sent out. Okay.
This is for ours. That's for Stoughton.
If you go to the email that was sent out on the 8th, and then again today, just so everyone would have it in the top of their email, there's a file called Aggie Southeastern. So if you go to that file, the Aggie Southeastern file, which was sent on the 8th at 3:05, and then also again today I resent it so everyone would have it in the top of their email. If you open the file Aggie Southeastern, in there are two pieces of digital paper, I guess you would want to call it. And the top one is for the Norfolk County Agricultural High School. Some people call it the Aggie, also known as the Aggie. And then the bottom part of that is Southeastern Regional School District. So there are two documents in that file. Well, that's not what was emailed out. I mean, that's the file that I'm referring to has two complete sheets of paper, digital paper, I guess you'd call it, and it shows the breakdown of students. Yeah, if the top half shows the Aggie, shows the quantity of students per grade, shows the tuition rate. The bottom part shows the assessment for Southeastern. You find it? No. Okay. Okay, do we have someone to present Southeastern?
Okay. I'm Robin Zoll. I'm the school committee member from Stoughton. And I'm here to present this Southeastern Regional School District budget. The total budget for Southeastern Regional was about 38 million. We have assessments. We're at net school spending, which means that the state tells us the minimum we have to spend, and that's what we assess our communities for. So this year, the assessment for Stoughton is $1,395,828. That's based on, I have the number of students here. It's based on 110 students, which is a decline of 13 students from last year. So that's why the assessment is actually lower than last year's. Last year it was $1,549,94. So our assessment actually went down by 153,266.
All right, thank you for that. Did you say there's a decline of 10 students?
13.
13 students, okay, thank you.
13.
All right, do we have any questions from the committee on the Southeastern Regional High School budget here? All right, hearing none. Questions or comments from the public on the Southeastern Regional High School budget? Cynthia, please identify yourself for the record.
Cynthia Walsh, 1096 Park Street. Ms. Zoll, is the decline in enrollment because there are more students? Are there Stoughton students on the wait list? I know you have a wait list.
We have a very long wait list. We have, what we do, unlike some of the other regionals, we actually score our students and we score on a point scale. We do not have, unlike some of the other regionals, a minimum number of students that we have to take. We ended up, so this year our cutoff was 93. They had to have 93 out of 100 points for admission. There were a lot of students at 92. We allowed some of the students who scored 92 because we had some openings, and that was it. It's the way we've been doing our, we talk about academics, this year at least, academics, attendance, discipline, and we have an interview. And the interview process is primarily to judge the interests of the students, because many students or the parents sort of want their kid to go there, but we want to know the student wants to go there and they're serious about vocational education. So that's the situation. There's going to be a change in how that we have to accept students, and we're not exactly happy about it because they want to go to a blind lottery, which could have a negative effect on the community, the smaller communities in our district, because 62% of our students are from Brockton already, and they will, and a lot of students, very high percentage of Brockton High School students apply, or Brockton Middle School students, I should say, apply. And so we don't know what the numbers will be if there is a blind lottery. But our school, we're very proud of, really reflects our district as far as number of students of color, number of special ed students, number of English language learners, number of low-income students. We really reflect the district, which we're very proud of.
All right, thank you very much for that. Any other questions or comments from the public on the Southeastern Regional High School budget? Hearing none, go to the next item. We have the Stoughton Public. Thank you very much,
Okay.
Robin. Have a wonderful evening. So next we have Stoughton Public Schools. Do we have someone who would like to present this?
Good evening. Thank you for your invitation this evening to present the FY26 budget for the Stoughton Public Schools. I'd like to introduce School Committee Vice Chair Lindsay Kreckler to begin.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. So I will turn it over to my colleagues in just a moment, but wanted to speak to you a little bit about the process that we used to arrive at the budget we present this evening. So the budget working group spent several months working on a budget that would meet our students' needs within a 3.8% increase. We had a lot of conversations and found that that was actually not something that was attainable. We shared an interest in working with the funds that we knew were available. So that was our commitment to try to put forth a budget at 3.8%. The town charter requires that a budget be passed by December 31st, which is not aligned with the timelines for state funds. So what we did was voted a 3.8% bottom line in December with the understanding that we would revisit our bottom line as soon as we knew more about what state funding was available. So in mid-January, that is what we did. Once we had our Chapter 70 funds from the town, we were able to adjust. The state allocated an additional $2.8 million or so through Chapter 70 funds. So the school committee on January 28th voted a new bottom line budget that allowed us to mostly maintain level service from last year, FY24, which was a service cut from FY23. So this, the numbers for Chapter 70 are calculated based on students who were enrolled in Stoughton on October 1st, 2024. We saw an increase in total enrollment as well as an increase in special populations that the state calculates differently. So just wanted to offer that context on how we got here, and I will turn it over to my colleagues to get into the details.
Thank you, Lindsay. I wanted to discuss some of the pressure points that we've been facing, and some of them are the same pressure points we've been discussing for the past few years. Despite 9 companies seeking our bid for our bus contract, only 1 company offered us a contract at a 14% increase over the next 3 years. And that's actually favorable compared to what other districts are receiving. We've had to reinstate bus fees in order to keep close to the same level of bus service we provided this past year, which, it should be noted, was a reduction in service from the previous couple of years. Our out-of-district costs continue to rise because of escalating costs from private transportation vendors, combined with further increases in tuition and fees at the collaboratives and the private schools to which we send special education students whose needs we are not able to meet in the district. And I would like to note that out-of-district students are all Stoughton residents and only Stoughton residents, and we have a legal mandate to provide them with the educational services they need. Tuitions at these schools have increased by approximately 20% over the past several years. Like us, these schools are facing a shortage of qualified educators and other employees, and thus need to raise wages to be competitive to fill the open positions from the limited pool of applicants. As all of us know, inflation continues to be a real issue. We have capped increases for almost all materials and supplies at 2% over last year's very limited increase. The state has applied an inflation rate of 1.93% to budget foundations for FY26. Last year, they applied 1.35%, and in FY24 and 23, they capped the inflation rate at 4.5%, despite inflation rates of 7 to 8%. And the difference between the state's calculated inflation rate and the inflation rates seen in the economy at large leave districts scrambling to make up the difference. And these pressure points mean that we've had to scale back and even cut materials and programs and staff. Last year, we laid off approximately 15 support staff, which led to a surge in unemployment costs. The 3.8% budget that we voted in December would require laying off another 29 to 30 FTEs, including general classroom teachers and staff who support them. These cuts harm students by increasing class sizes and reducing services, courses, and programs. Additionally, unemployment costs would balloon even more. And these continued cuts year after year would mean the amount of money needed to restore cut services to the budget would soon become too great. FY26 is the 5th year of the Student Opportunity Act, the legislation reforming school spending under Chapter 70 of Mass General Law that is meant to close achievement gaps among disadvantaged groups. The foundation budget and net school spending set by the state are the required minimum a district needs to spend to meet its mandates and provide what the state considers a, quote, adequate, end quote, education to its students. When Governor Healy released her FY26 budget proposal in late January, that's what we've been calling House 1, our FY26 foundation budget and net school spending both came in at $65,412,011, which is a $4,877,861 or 8.06% increase over FY25. That represents an almost $20.5 million increase in foundation budget since FY22. As Lindsay mentioned, the 3.8 budget voted in December does not meet this minimum spending requirement. And failing to meet our requirement not only incurs financial penalties from the state, but negatively affects our ability to provide fair and equitable education to all of our students. With House One, we also learned that our FY26 Chapter 70 aid under the SOA will be at least $31,413,964. House One historically has been the minimum for the state aid we receive. Often once the budgets move through the House and the Senate, we see some small increase. The state aid estimate from House One is an increase of $2,819,530, or 9.86 over FY25, and represents an almost $14 million increase since FY22. I want to note these SOA increases in foundation budget, or net school spending, and state aid are driven by student needs, and they are meant to address student needs, particularly among high needs populations, namely the low-income students, the special education students, and the English language students. We are receiving $2.8 million more in aid than anticipated, but that is to support nearly $4.9 million more in required spending. So on January 28th, 2025, as Lindsay said, the school committee voted a new bottom line of $68,076,863 to incorporate all of the Chapter 78 under the SOA. Doing that now allows us to satisfy our minimum spending requirement and open in September with the qualified staff we need to provide the education and services our students require and deserve. By restoring about $2.8 million in positions, services, supplies, and materials to the budget, we would essentially be at the FY25 level services, although it's important to note that FY25 faced a number of scale backs and cuts, including FTEs. And even with all of the anticipated Chapter 70 funds included in our FY26 budget, we are still facing the real possibility of laying off up to 15 FTEs for the second year in a row. And I'll turn it over to Dr. Bayed at this time to get into the details.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good evening to the Finance Committee Chair, Vice Chair, and members. Thank you for having us. Just wanted to make a couple of general thoughts as we get into the budget discussions. I wanted to note some bullet points that you may have received, a PowerPoint that was provided to you through Mr. Enochian, a budget back in January that was provided to you as well. And I believe you've also received a memo from me that has a number of office hours available, including this Saturday at 10 o'clock at the central office for 90 minutes of Q&A, requests for more information, whatever needs to take place that either FinCom members, other elected officials or appointed officials, or the general public would like to have from Stoughton Public Schools. There's also dates on there for virtual opportunities in the morning, afternoons, and as well as daytime meetings and evening meetings during the months of March. And then we will also potentially publish at least 3 to 5 more dates in April. As a district, we've attempted to keep the increase minimal and only targeting some of the major areas that are within our budget process. One, inflation. The second, special services, special education, and ELL, contract obligations agreed upon 2 years ago, and as you heard earlier, transportation. These 4 areas make up the full budget increases that are notable in our budget. We are not adding any general education classroom teachers, administrators, or support staff. 0. We are only adding in the obligated area of special education for this coming year. Daily, weekly, monthly, and yearly, we deal with an influx of change around people, students, and staff. That's what we do every day. This influx of change is grounded on the individual needs of each student and based on the daily, weekly, monthly, and yearly changes of those needs. Furthermore, staffing for Stoughton Public Schools when backfilling is very much like an overtime process. I don't have a choice. I have to put a body in that classroom. It's simple. When an employee is out, we have to backfill. Yet that's never considered the same as something like overtime. It has to come out of our operating budget. We have not come back, at least during my tenure, to ask for more funding for that purpose, although those numbers are increasing every single year. The chairwoman just mentioned the mandates and how much they matter and how much the school committee has to undergo that process of meeting the needs of those students. It's not a choice. We are at the level today where a difficult discussion in the town of Stoughton may have to happen. You will be cutting general education opportunities for special education and ELL. It is a conversation that I mentioned to you last year, and I've mentioned to town meeting you do not want to have as a community. It destroys communities because programs have to be cut somewhere, and the federal mandates and the state mandates don't allow for us to just cut those programs. I want to speak briefly about what that means to Stoughton Public Schools. Just in K to 5, kindergarten through fifth grade, pre-K to 5, we've been very aggressive in making sure that as much of our special education services delivery are available to students are done here in Stoughton, Massachusetts, on the grounds of your 8 facilities. Currently, within our pre-K to 5 only, 23% of 439 total IEPs out of 1,841 students in pre-K through 5. Since September 1st, we've received 101 initial referrals for testing, 101. For academic support purposes in pre-K through 5, 215 students are receiving those services. Related services in IEP, 108 students. Sub-separate programming, specialized classrooms, 116. Speech service delivery, 305 students. Occupational therapy, 181. Physical therapy, 42. Counseling within an IEP process, 167. Counseling outside with parent permission, 204. That is just in pre-K through 5. This doesn't include numbers that I'm happy to share with you in the future when I get them for our secondary. These numbers change every single day. Our churn, or the in and out of students in our district, is also becoming part of our challenge. Over 10% of our students are in and out of the district on a daily, weekly, monthly, yearly basis. So let's just say, for the sake of rounding down, we're 3,800 students. We're a little bit more than that. 10% is 380. So we have over 380 students within our district that are in and out. In other words, I leave, you come in, that's a churn. Or I leave, I come back, that's a churn. Students who unenroll, go back to their home country and then come back, or unenroll, move to another town, then come back, or even military service. That is a daily, weekly, monthly, yearly phenomenon that happens in public education and in Stoughton at a higher number than local communities. Our NESDEC projected numbers for Stoughton Public Schools that was provided to you suggests for the second year in a row that pre-K to 12 education over the next approximately 7 to 8 years will grow to over 4,100 students, up from our current 3,800. And that's pretty significant because remember, the churn is going to be part of that. Students that we give direct services to every day in the general classroom or specialized classroom may be here for 2 years, gone for 3 years, back again, and so on and so forth, daily, weekly, monthly, and yearly in Stoughton. When we look at our trends that was also provided to you, our 10-year trends for low income and economically disadvantaged. The reason why there's two titles are together is because it used to be called low income. Then it got changed to being called economically disadvantaged. Now it's being called low income again. So we use that 10-year. We've gone from 22.7% in FY15. Again, this was provided to you, to a current number in FY24 of 45.5%, over 23% increase in that line, in the trend over the last 10 years and growing. And you see it in our DESE number page where it notes the category that we're in. English language learner, 2015, 4% of the student population. FY24, 11.5, going to be above 12% this year. Again, these trends have been provided to you in a handout as part of the budget. Students with disabilities has been more consistent. FY15, 15.5, roughly FY24 at 20. We're going to hover right around that 20 number this year. Again, remember that number changes on a regular basis as well. So let's get into the Chapter 70 Foundation budget and how we get here. Again, provided to you in the handout, the foundation budget formula for Stoughton is very beneficial. As you've heard me say in the past, the concept of held harmless or hold harmless this year was set by the governor at $75 per student. So every school system in the state gets a minimum of $75 per student. You take $75, you multiply it by the total number of enrollment as of October 1st, 24, that's your number that you're getting. In our particular case, that number will be above $750 per student. Why? EL, special education, low income, high needs, which places us in category 9, almost at category 10. Category 10 would actually probably give us close to $1,000 per student. If you recall, 2 fiscal years ago, we received $1,331 per student. Back down last year into the 500s, and this year back up into well over 700 in Chapter 70 funds based on the enrollment and the needs of students. You'll also note that as we look at our enrollment, we increased last year by 79 students. I'm going to take a sidebar here and provide you a shelter update because I know there'll be a question that comes up. We have received notification in writing through DESE, through the state support system, if you will, that the Sonesta Hotel will close by the 30th of June, and those students will not be in Stoughton Public Schools unless they have moved into a home, rental, et cetera, in Stoughton. By mid-August, and no later than mid-August, the Hampton Inn will also close as a shelter. Same situation there. Those students would become, if they're not here on September, Tuesday after Labor Day, then they're not enrolled with us. And that's been an assurance from the state that the 2 shelter situations are going to be closed for the town of Stoughton. I believe you knew that from other communications through the town manager's office and so on. You'll note, you heard earlier that the enrollment at Southeastern is down. Norfolk Aggie seems to be up by about 1 student in these accounts. Just to note, I think a prior question, transportation is not the reason for Southeastern or Norfolk Aggie. Both have to provide transportation to students at no cost. The budget summary for us, line item, the gold bar, if you will, the yellow bar, will note in the administration line, the 35.45% increase. That is for negotiations. There are no new positions. That's literally, I have to put money there because I'm negotiating with a number of unions still. None of them have come to an agreement. And as you know, we always have to have a place marker somewhere. Under instruction, in general, the increase is contractual. And then also the 4.0 special education positions as part of the process. The major lines for us that are concerning, so that you know, is the continuation of the costs in special education. Those are going up on a regular basis. Our costs out of district tuition can go from the low end of about $64,000 a year, not including transportation, to over $300,000 for a residential placement. That's how wide of a gap it can be. We have approximately 50 students today that require out of district specialized services from a third party. Typically for us, it's the collaborative that we belong to, but it can also be private schools, special education schools. Just today we learned that one of our private schools costs will go up $50,000, just like that. And there's nothing that we can do about it. If that student is placed there, we have to pay for it. Major changes for you to know about. In trying to get into some further full transparency, we published the budget by school and by district-wide. We did that because we get a lot of questions about how much money do we really spend at the school level. And so this is trying to establish for you a new norm over time of every single change and switch that happens at a school level will be outlined in our budget process going forward. And you'll note that in the future, we're going to continue to do that for ELL, special education, central office, and so on. We put it this year under district-wide. We started with the schools. It's a pretty significant process. Literally, you'll see in your budgets that in some cases a school is up a total of 3% or 1% or 1.5%. in terms of the overall cost to that building. In most cases, that is predominantly contractual obligations. We're entering the last year of a 3-year with the teachers union and the last year with the paras union, if I remember correctly. No, one more. So we have our teachers union that's coming up. The other overarching theme that is important that I'd like to share with the committee is some of the changes that will be taking place in the near future. And those changes will account for the following. The Commonwealth of Massachusetts will see approximately 20 to 30% turnover in teachers, administrators over the next 4 fiscal years. It is the highest number over the last 20 years. And why? Well, it's the people in my age group. We're all getting to years 33, 34, and 35 years of service. And at 35, you max out. Literally, you max out. So 99.9% of people leave the industry. At the same time that that's happening, there are no students coming out of college to work in the field. Even in elementary education, we are seeing a significant drop in the number of applicants that we get. So what does that mean? It means the same phrase that you have heard from other folks. Supply and demand requires that we become active in literally taking professionals from other districts to come work in Stoughton. Those are not going to be your bachelor step 1 and your master's step 1 folks. Those are going to be significantly more expensive. Those are going to be salaries that are going to cost you well into the 80s and 90s and not the 55 to 60, because you have to take folks from other communities. When it comes to world language, mathematics, sciences, special education, in general, those core areas are the hardest for us to hire. But when you're looking at the state college system, I'm a proud graduate of it, and even the private schools, the number of students that are coming out, we have a wonderful relationship with Stonehill College. I think many of you know that. And even those numbers are dwindling for our student teachers. We don't see as many as we used to. So the concept of supply and demand and how that's going to hurt the bottom number on budgets, specifically I'll speak about school budgets, is real, because you don't have the same folks that were coming out when I came out in 1992 at a whopping $18,900 back in those days, bachelor step 1 at Southeastern Regional, by the way. Those folks are just no longer available at the same number that they're used to. So that has a direct hit on the bottom number of any budget, including when you are looking at people who have specialized educational training in the areas that I just mentioned. I don't know if you want me to also talk about capital or if you want me to wait on that. It's up to you, Mr. Chairman.
We'll wait on that for now.
Okay. I'm open to questions, other information, anything I can't answer tonight. I will be happy to address it as I did last year in an email to the chair, and the chair will then send it forward to you. And like I said, there are multiple opportunities online or in person to join me. As you know, I'll take any questions.
All right, thank you very much for that presentation.
I just have a quick question right now. Could you give me what the actual budget request is?
Sure. The actual budget request is $68,076,863. That includes the SOA funding. House 1.
Yes.
Through you, that number I see on the budget that he handed out, but the handout that we got today has a 66,841, which also changed, which looks like it changed because of Southeastern Regional and Norfolk. Can you help reconcile the two?
I cannot.
I think that you're adding up all 3 school districts with that number.
On the Stoughton Public Schools, on the handout that we have, it says $65,412,11, and that's different than the number that was just read, which is in our Stoughton Public Schools handout of $68,076,863.
And that's the question that Carolyn, I think, just asked to get clarification on.
I think the figure here was the previous figure submitted before the House one.
I just got the handout, this
Yeah,
handout
no,
tonight.
I see, I share your confusion. I'm thinking this number here for the Stoughton Public Schools on our handout that's highlighted in yellow is $65,412.11. Was that the previous 3 point,
I
Or does
believe,
the-
I believe that the 65,412.11 number was the number that the school committee voted the end of December.
okay,
Is that correct?
And
Dr.
that does
Valletta?
not have the 2.8 million
right.
Chapter 70? Is that the difference?
Yeah, the original, if I remember correctly, the original school committee vote is 65,257,429 is what was originally published. The SOA is the 2.8, the total target is 68,076,863.
Okay, thank you for that. Do we have any questions from the committee? Mark?
Thank you, through you. Are you still keeping the lunches free for all students for next year?
Yeah, great question. So
And did the state agree to it?
So it's a state line item for about 168 million or so, if I recall. And that, I don't know where that is in the process, but that's where it's been. The biggest concern that we actually have is the federal government. We really don't know where that's going. We have not seen a direct impact based on some decisions that happened yesterday at USDOE. We are concerned about the Department of Agriculture, which also has a direct connection. But we just haven't seen a direct connection to that yet. I think it's going to take a little bit of time before it comes down to us.
Until it filters out.
But right now, the plan is to continue with that.
Continue the program?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Because I've heard good results from it.
It's
That's what I was wondering.
there's no doubt that the results of free to the individual family, a cost as part of the state budget, federal support, has enhanced students, if you will, at least twice a day, having food that's provided to them. And as we see the increase in low income, regardless of any other views, the fact of the matter is that feeding kids matters.
Okay, thank you. Please keep it
Welcome.
if you can.
I thank you for that. Do we have any other questions from the committee? Lisa?
Hi. So I just want to give you some context to my question in terms, so I know when we went through COVID, there were ESSER monies, and then that was supposed to be one-time money, but it looked like that got rolled over into the special needs build-up. So what was meant to be one-time money in the hiring of staff of that was supposed to be done after the ESSER money did not, in fact, become one-time money. It became foundational money, I believe you like to call that. So that's a context for my question. On watching the school committee meeting in January, it was noted that there were 11 grants. I noticed you made a joke when Mr. Ford was sitting next to you, and you're like, I just sign grants all day long that he writes. So with making note of the 11 grants for 2.2 million, so I'm just curious as to, is this one-time grants? Is this grant used for these grants, 11 grants or plus by now, used for the operational budget? I'm trying to understand how grant money is coming into the school budget and what that does foundationally when the grants go away for the taxpayers.
So I'll answer the question from the history that I have. I can only address from that. I'm happy to ask that question further. It's my understanding when I first came in on the ESSER funds that we were utilizing that for the purposes of intervention positions, which are not special ed positions. They're positions that are helping any student who needs interventions in literacy or reading and mathematics. Those were the two targets. Those 17 positions were let go last year when the ESSER funding ran out in FY24. Those were part of our layoffs last year. And those positions are not with us directly. So that's what I know from the positions. So I would not call them special education positions because the intention behind intervention is to actually hit students before you get to the level of having to sign a federal contract between the family and the school, which is the IEP, IDEA requirement. In terms of the 11 grants, 2 major grants come in on a consistent basis. The IDEA federal grant for special education and the Title I, and then there's a couple of smaller ones, Title II, III, and IV. That is the major makeup of our grants in Stoughton. They're embedded, by the way, on the page that says grants. And we can get you some further breakdown of that in terms of the positions. IDEA must be utilized for the purposes of special education. So they are paying for either, in most cases, paraprofessionals that are in the classroom. In most cases, there's some supply money in there and that type of stuff. But in general, those funds are not at the cost to the operational budget. Those folks are not in the operational budget. They're in those grants. Title I is above and beyond teaching and learning. So you have to supplement what students are receiving for services, not supplant what students are receiving for services. And again, we can get both of those line items, how many FTEs in there if you would like. It's very easy for us to do. In terms of all the other grants in the last year and a half that I've been here, they have been predominantly connected to a number of specialty grants not connected to FTEs. An example, $20,000 straight grant for the registration center. As one minor one. I think we received a one-time $249,000 grant this year for non-personnel usage only. What did I do with it? I put in for the fence, which we're going to put up at the Jones School play area. So it's an enclosed area for the students that are in that program. Same thing at the Doss School. We did one-time purchases of software for interpreting surfaces. Those are just some of the examples. Happy to get you a list of the purchases there as well. There were no new personnel added within those, quote, specialty grants. Then came, as you know, during the last 2 years, the shelter situation. As you know, we got a double whammy of that. We had kids enroll in Stoughton Public Schools that were, quote, residents of the town needing services, and at the same time received over 100 students, almost at one time 139 shelter students that came in to the district at the same time. So what we did there was we absorbed some of the starting cost coming from the shelter money, even though we still needed that position anyways. So we were able to absorb some of that over time. And as kids leave, we either have to keep the position or we eliminate the position. It's either one or the other. Remember that the double whammy for us was not just the shelter students coming in. We saw an influx and significant increase as well in our EL population that are quote, resident citizens of the town of Stoughton.
All right, thank you for that, Dr. Baeta. Do we have any other questions from the committee on the Stoughton Public Schools budget? Arnie.
Oops, sorry. Thank you for being here.
Bet.
I'm asking this question because I simply don't know what this is. On page, let's see. It's on page 19 of the handout, but I don't know what the actual, it's additional information, and it talks about K through 12 choice in, K through 12 choice out.
Sure.
And out of district special education. Could you define that?
Sure. Good to see you as well. Thank you. Choice in would be any student who's school choicing into the district. We are not a school choice district. Every June 1st, by June 1st, I recommend, and every superintendent before me has recommended, that because of our increased enrollment, because our buildings are so tight and so on, we do not accept students coming into the district from other, except for one caret. We have an employee program that if you're an employee and there's space, the employee pays a certain amount of money and the student can come here. It's a family first type of initiative. We average anywhere from 2 kids to maybe, I think at one point we had 10 or 11 here, but the numbers lately have been single digits. Added to that is Choice Out, a family who chooses to send their students to one of the accepting choice districts. And that's not a charter. That is school choice out specifically to another public school, not a public charter, because the public charter is under the public charter line item. It's a different line item. That's a minimum of $5,000 per student, and sometimes it goes up a little bit. It averages closer to $6,100 to $6,200 because there may be students that are getting special education services that are actually going out of town. And that is on the bottom line of the town budget, if you will. When you look at out-of-district tuition, that goes to the comment earlier that I said students that go out of district for special education services, those tuitions are paid to public collaboratives or private schools, depending on the agreement between the parents and the school system on the best interest of the student for their services. I don't know if that makes sense.
I think it does. Does that include Southeast Regional also?
It does not. Southeastern Regional and Norfolk Aggie, 2 outstanding schools, by the way. I am not an anti-VOC or anti-Aggie superintendent. I believe that we're in a partnership to educate students. But they are separate line items from us, that not part of our budget.
What about the out-of-district special education? What is that? Is that for parents who want to send them out?
It's not about wanting to send them out. So let's say you're a parent and I'm a special education administrator / team chairperson, and a neuropsychological evaluation's been done, academic testing has been done, and you as a parent get all of that information. We get all the information. We really sit down and talk about the programs that we offer in Stoughton and do our programs fit the student staying in Stoughton coming to that program. Some parents will come in and say, no, I would like to take a look at the collaborative because my student is going to do better in a smaller environment. Let's say they have a behavioral learning disability. I like to call them challenges, by the way, because these kids, they really challenge themselves. They really do, and do very, very well. So that student might go to the behavioral program at North River Collaborative, and we pay that. Now, the payment process is incredibly complicated, but in general, we pay the tuition, and then there's something called circuit breaker. You don't see that until the following fiscal year, but basically, the first 45,000 or so, it's actually closer to 50,000 if I remember correctly now. The first X number automatically comes off the top. We own it. And then you get reimbursed on it, typically low end of 70%, high end of 75. By the way, I've been around for the 50% circuit breaker. We're even lower. That comes back in as part of next year, but you still owe on the first quote $45,000. The only benefit that you see from that every once in a while, that's a significant benefit, is if you have a good carryover and you're able to like prepay and get that done for the following fiscal year. And then something like a student moves out of town and they're no longer with us, or a student graduates out at either 18 or even 22, then you might see some type of a cost benefit that would go into the circuit breaker. And then we use it the following fiscal year to offset the increased costs.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
You bet.
Well, thank you very much for that. Any other questions? Jonna?
Thank you very much, Vaughn, through you. Following on what Arnie just said, I knew of a student a few years ago, maybe 3 years ago, who was a foster child, and he got transferred to Plymouth, and we were busing him back here. And I was wondering, is that still the policy? And if so, how many students that would apply to?
So that is the McKinney-Vento process. That is a federal law. That is not a local bylaw or a local policy of the Stoughton School Committee. The McKinney-Vento Act basically plays around the idea that if a student becomes, quote, homeless, that student, if they're living in Plymouth, can stay in Stoughton, and the cost of transportation will be split 50-50 by the two communities. And that can go on for quite a while. We've had bills in the last Well, I'll just talk about the last 15 months, 16 months I've been here. We've had bills of $10,000 each community for one student because the supply and demand of transportation is so significant. There just aren't enough companies out there that want to do this.
Are there a lot of students that fall into that category?
So our biggest transition right now with that is our shelter transition, because if the student is going from the shelter to Mansfield, then Mansfield and us for the remainder of this year have to split that. You bet.
All right, thank you for that. Linda, you have a question?
Thank you for being here. I have a question about the busing situation. So that was a great lead in, Joanna. It was a 14% on the contracts.
Correct.
Which is going to lead to a reduction in service.
So what we did is we went out for a bid. That bid was for 14 buses, plus taking care of our what's called our late buses and also our athletic buses. And that bid came in for the 3 years at $4.3 million, roughly. I don't have it to the penny in front of me, which was a 14% increase over the 3 years. The school committee last evening voted the bid. The bid is actually, believe it or not, a good bid. I hate to say it that way because 14% over 3 years sounds like a lot. And it is. It's about a little over $500,000 approximately. But what we're hearing that's out there is significantly more. And just remember, and you can read between the lines if you'd like, we had 9 interested companies, but we got 1 bid. Nothing we can do about that. In terms of reduction in services, I don't think we'll see that staying with the 14 buses. If anything, maybe the fees will actually offset that. Less people are going to want to pay a fee. The fee is $375 a year for 1 student, $750 family cap. That was voted last night. And that's grounded on the policy that will move forward. That was also voted last night. We will make an announcement of the new pay and ride. And we will also make an announcement of the registration process to try to clear up some of the things that happened in the last couple of years. What we will most likely, I'm going to say most likely because I can't control what comes outside, is I won't be getting calls from you or others or people from outside of state that I'm, quote, giving buses to shelter students, but not to Stoughton students. I think those days are over.
Will there be an opportunity for like a low income family to apply for need?
Yeah, so students on free and reduced lunch automatically can be serviced at no cost. And of course, there are always special circumstances that take place. And we always try to work with families, but we do really stick to that policy of making sure that folks are paying as they're applying. It was another reason why we did the family cap for the first time. We've never, and my understanding is we have not had a family cap in the past. You're welcome.
All right, thank you for that. Lauren, you have any questions on this?
Hi, how are you? Question, what special ed are we not able to provide to the students?
It's your most highly clinical areas where a psychiatrist has to be utilized, areas where a student may be in a hospital-like situation, bed, a student who may have significantly severe medical situations. But we also have students in Stoughton Public Schools currently who have significant medical issues and are supported on a regular basis. So it really comes down to the families and us talking about the best interest. Typically, singleton issues are one of the areas that is always difficult, right? Because you're not going to hire a teacher for one student to be all day together in one classroom. It's just not a good situation. So working with collaboratives or even the private schools, you have an opportunity to have other students with the same learning challenges or physical challenges or medical challenges actually coming more together. I will tell you, just the other day, I was at one of our elementary schools with one of our children, and this child has significant medical issues and was being challenged by our physical therapist and occupational therapist on just physically walking, right? And you know, being successful, right? Because that's what we do, right? Is try to get them to do that. So in general, it's those issues. We do have parents that will say, well, listen, I hear that this school is the best school for this type of learning challenge, and that's where I want us to go. We walk through a process. We may get there, but we do have the right to walk families through that process.
So I know this is probably like a huge cost, but has there ever been any discussion about making it a possibility that we can meet all the needs for whatever students we have?
So I will tell you that 3,800 plus students, approximately, give or take, depending on the day, as I keep saying, the day, the week, the month, the year, 50 plus or minus is actually a really good number for a district our size. Now, I'm not suggesting that we can't do more. I'm not suggesting that we shouldn't look. I will tell you what our biggest problem is right now: space. Where do we put? And we know there's a lot of other discussions going on around that I won't get tonight because it's beyond the scope of this discussion. But the fact of the matter is the space is our biggest concern right now.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you for that. Any other questions from the committee? Chet?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Dr. Beata, thank you for the presentation tonight. I have just one question about legal fees, general purpose. Looks like you have a $28,000 increase. Is that has nothing to do with collective bargaining, is that correct?
It does have to do with collective bargaining. Our fees, our legal fees go in two directions. They go labor and they go specialized. Specialized, it would be specialized cases that we have with the state, potential, any type of a lawsuit with an individual situation actually works through the town. But it's typically labor and then specialized cases are the two areas.
Okay, so you still have the legal, collective bargaining, you have 25,000 in that one, so you're actually up to 78,000.
Yes.
For legal fees for collective bargaining and for the other legal fees.
Yeah.
Purpose.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No. So I think that a couple of different things. First, I am not one to just jump to our attorney to get an answer. In some cases, because I've been around for a while, I've seen the case, so on and so forth. I utilize my colleagues to say, have you ever heard of this one before? But when we get into contract negotiations, that becomes a core part of using legal counsel for every minute of every meeting, of every phone call, of every memo, because it has a long-term implication if something doesn't go in the direction of the school committee and the administration. So as you'll see, some of the increase, the major increase is we are coming into contract negotiations with our largest union this coming year.
And that's next year, for next year or the year after?
Yeah, we'll begin negotiation this coming fiscal year for the following start. Yeah, okay. If we can come to agreement.
All right, thank you for clarifying that for me. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you for that question, Chet. Any other questions from the committee? Lisa?
Hi. So I just want to review a couple of things. I was looking at the DESE Foundation from like 2008 to 2024, and it ranges anywhere between 8.6 to a high of 31%. Now, when I compare that to the scores over that period of time, I see a huge increase. So for example, last year, the school budget was at 7.1% increase. This year, with the addition of the Chapter 70 money, instead of going into the general fund, which could then be put toward a stabilization fund for capital projects, it was given back to the school budget, which brings it effectively to an 8.3% increase. So for the taxpayers' benefit, they see the foundational costs of education exponentially increasing, and then the scores or the value, because that's really the accountability, is how well our kids are actually being educated or succeeding toward excellence. So I'm just wondering if you can help me understand that, because that's getting very difficult. And I know you say these, a lot of this is mandated, but at what point do we as a society say some mandates are becoming unsustainable?
Sure.
That's the context of the question.
So I see success, and we may disagree on this, but hopefully we can be somewhat on the same page. I see success on what happens to students when they leave Stoughton High School. From the day that they entered this district to the day that they left is how I define success. And the reason why I do is because our state accountability system, as you know, is based on the year-to-year state score. And oh, by the way, the taxpayers just passed that MCAS is gone, so that's another discussion. And as you know, I don't think that one test is all, but I do think that taking away the MCAS was not in our long-term best interest without having at least a discussion of what should replace it. But that said, that's what happened. I can't control that. So I see the story of the student and success and what that means. So we currently are, quote, tracking, it's a bad word in education, but we are now tracking our students internally. We have a system, a software system, where we're able to take those students every single day, attendance, grades, discipline, to a certain extent, other information as well, and multiple different assessments, if you will, not just one. That's the goal for every student. And then targeting those students that need support before they go down a road of needing more support that could actually cost more. So at the end of the day, for the first time in the history of Stoughton Public Schools, the AP College Board recognized Stoughton High School, and I think Stoughton Public Schools, because the kids have been here, as a Bronze Star high-performing AP program. First time this year. The high school, first time School of Recognition for highest performing increase in improvement year after year. First time in its history. High school, top 40% high school nationally, U.S. News and World, U.S. News, which a lot of school systems use, especially the schools that are very affluent. We're now on that list for our performance and all of that. Stoughton High School, graduation rate, meeting above state standard and improving every year. Stoughton High School, Stoughton Public Schools, attendance rate improving every year. Stoughton is now considered a, quote, urban district. We have the second or the third highest scores of any other urban district, and there's over 30 of them now. The South School and the Wilkins schools recognized by U.S. World Report for their academic outcomes just happened in 2 consecutive years for the first time. When we look at so to me, that's the definition of success. Now, added to that is, where do we think we can do better in terms of the needs of students? I will tell you that the loss of the ESSER funds for the interventionists was a significant loss, and we're going to see a bump in that right now. We are, because we don't have that body, if you will, highly qualified to work with that student who is 2 months, 3 months, 4 months behind and needs that special attention for 8 to 12 weeks to get over the top, if you will. You need the personnel for that. We don't have it in place. I think the other key definition of increased performance for us is going to be, we've just put, for the first time ever in the history of the district, we have at least 90% of students by the end of 3rd grade reading at grade level. That's a goal that Stoughton Public School has. We've never had that goal. I instituted that goal with support of the school committee and my administrative team because, first of all, as superintendent, I can't just put out that I want 50% of the kids doing that. I want at least 90% of the kids getting there. And we are starting to see in our internal scores this year those improvements. So that's a lot of that. But remember that 80% approximately, give or take 0.5% of my budget is people. It's people directly related. And so when you have a specialized classroom with 10 students, 3 paraprofessionals, a teacher, there's a cost. I have to determine that cost on, can we provide the program at a better cost? And oh, by the way, I think outstanding programming, or do I close down a program and 10 kids just cost us $450,000 or actually $550,000, and it's even makes it even higher. There are certain parts of my budget that are literally practically uncontrollable. Literally practically uncontrollable because of where students can be placed or the needs of the student. Just remember, if a student needs a 45-day placement for the purposes of seeing and supporting what this child really needs, that's money that I have to pay for, $12,000 to $15,000. And then the student comes back or the student stays, there's more money that goes with that. So our costs, I do think that our costs related to our outcomes are lining up more every single year. Inflation did hurt school budgets. I would say they hurt every single one of the other departments that you're reviewing. They've absolutely have hurt us from the cost of personnel and contracts to the cost of the delivery of the milk. Everything's gone up.
Okay, through you, Vaughn. So my main point in this is when I'm looking at the DART scores, we're talking 35%. We're talking like not even 50%. So we're asking, and this isn't directed toward you, it's the system or the institution. There's a structural issue here. So we can say we're the best compared to world news, whatever. But when we're talking no better than 51% for test scores and taxpayers, because that is who is funding not only this school budget, but every other department that you were just referring to, there's an accountability issue here in terms of those scores are, it's below any of us, I could honestly say, would want for our children.
I don't disagree with your statement.
And if we're reducing standards, then that puts us, so at what point, again, do we argue against mandates that aren't really helping our students, if that's our goal for all our students?
I guess it's not my right to ask you as a finance committee member, but let me just, instead of asking the question, just say that I agree with a few things you just said. We just spent 25 plus years on education reform, and we're talking a great talk about improvements and so on and so forth. And for the last 10 years of my superintendency of 16 years, I've spent time saying we need a different accountability system. And there's a number of us that have said that for years, right? We then got into this, I'll just say it, special interest vote of getting rid of the MCAS. Now, here's the question I'm not supposed to ask, but don't answer it. The question is, where do we think these scores are going next year? Down. Why? Kids know there's no accountability. I mean, they're not. But the accountability on the school system by the state is still going to be there. So we're about to enter every school, from the richest community in town to the poorest community in town. We're about to enter a really interesting time period of what do these scores really, really mean, which I think is what you're suggesting.
All right, thank you very much for that. You good, Lisa? Okay, any other questions from the committee? Heidi?
Hi, thanks for being here tonight. Sorry I missed your presentation, but I was at Nights of Excellence at the high school.
I'd rather have been there with you.
It was a lot of fun. You guys are doing some great things over there. I got to see my daughter's physics activity and her robotics activity. So I apologize for being late, but thought it was for a good reason. That being said, I'm sorry I missed your presentation. I do have a question related to the Performing Arts Department. In full disclosure, I serve on the board of POPs. And so just want to let you know that, and the people. Last fall, we ran into a situation where there wasn't funding for us to attend, the marching band to attend a competition. And it was really difficult as a board member and as a parent of one of the marching band performers to find out that we weren't able to go to a competition because of lack of funds. Funds came from somewhere. I don't really know where, but I'm just wondering how this budget this year, and I'm looking and I can't really see like Winter Guard and, percussion and, that type of stuff in here. And I'm just wondering how this budget supports students in performing arts, because it doesn't seem like our athletic department ever has a budget problem with their bus, but it seems like we oftentimes have problems at the end of the year with, I know specifically Winter Guard because I'm a parent of a Winter Guard performer. And I just want to know how you're supporting those students and those activities in this budget.
Yeah, if I recall, this is the Tuesday night or Wednesday night POPs request for funding, and the event is the following Saturday or something, if I remember. That is a total breakdown in communication. The funding was there. And I'll just leave it at that. We internally took care of it the moment I got hold of it. The moment I found out that you guys were being requested by something without it coming to my office, I've made sure that all of those things are no longer happening. As it pertains to our budget, we are maintaining as much as we can. We are not absorbing any cuts in those departments. I will tell you, our athletic department has seen some cuts as well in the past in terms of materials and supplies and all of that. But you're right, that bus situation was a communication disaster, for lack of a better word. What we've tried to do back with this budget is we've tried to build back the things that were literally in material supplies and the transportation. So what we said is, let's say you had 6 competitions. I'm just using that number. Those 6 competitions, those 6 buses are in the budget. Now, if you're asking for the 7th, the 8th, and the 9th, we're going to have to figure that out. We didn't put those into the budget because we don't know. But we maintained what we've been doing year after year so that there's no situations that's happened this year.
Thank you.
You bet. And by the way, thanks for being a mom and doing that first. Much more fun.
All right, thank you. Carolyn?
Through you. I have a question about what you just announced with the bus fees. So I know that was voted last night. Where is that going to show up in the budget?
It's in your line item, and it's an estimated $125,000 that we'd be taking in.
Do you know what page?
Very bottom.
Bottom left.
We did a
No.
haven't seen it yet. So we accounted for it. I'll get you the information, but it's accounted for within the line item. Oh, it's in the offset page of the budget? Is that the front page?
In your presentation packet, it looks like it's on page 25.
Yep. Now, Ms. Campbell, just remember, we're taking a best education guest, and in full disclosure, the bid for what we put in for this year's increase is actually off by $31,000. So we're already scraping for $31,000 before the budget's even been approved.
Thank you. And will that, and of course, just so that people are aware, any family student that lives in grades K through 6 that lives 2 miles from the school are still bused for free?
State law, yes.
Yes. Thank you. Could we also get an update of the grants, how much each of the grants are, what they go for, and what's covered for it? Just you can email us. You can email the chair that.
Yep.
Thank you.
You bet.
All right, thank you. Any other questions, Arnie?
Hi. I wanted to go to page 25, maintenance. Last town meeting in May, we approved, I think it was painting the lines for all the parking spots. We also just approved the new battery, I should say backup battery. And then we got one coming for a firewall and an access point.
We're gonna cover that when we get to the articles.
No, this is a general
right,
question
thank you.
concerning maintenance. Have you put in some sort of budget or something so that you can cover this under the budget, existing budget? Instead of going to town meeting to get these things? In other words, you know that the batteries have to be replaced every 5 years. Firewall, according to Tricia, has to be replaced every 5 years. I'm not sure about the wireless access point. So if we could put some money aside on a yearly basis and put it into maintenance, you wouldn't have to come to town meeting.
Yeah, so I would love to have the opportunity to have an excess deficiency line item in the school budget that would allow for me to take $50,000 this year, allow for it to carry over into next year, then the next year, and then I wouldn't have to come back here for a special. But I'm not allowed to do that. Only Southeastern is by the state statute, because it makes sense. It would make some sense, but that's not the way this side of public education works. So our goal would be that there would be less, and maybe this is not your question, but there would be less of a surprise if we have and will have for you a capital plan that would have these types of things within that process. But in terms of the carryover, adding $400,000, $500,000 for a one-time cost it's a pretty significant cost to the line item budget.
Thank you.
All right, when you have any other questions? Lisa?
Hi.
Hey.
So, okay, I have two questions. We were talking about high needs. I've been watching the school committee meetings, and I know the vice chair had asked a question about, she called it general population versus the high needs. So I'm just trying to learn, I know you said it earlier. Did you say, I know the high needs is considered low income, English language learner, special ed, and social emotional? And that's representing, is that 20% of the overall 38, roughly 100 students we have? I just want to, just general, I'm not looking to hold you.
So our total current high needs population is 58.5% of enrolled students. And the state average is below that, I believe around the 56. Now,
In that, before you continue with that, in that, a high needs population cost per student is, did I read something in our literature, is anywhere between 20 to 50% more cost per pupil than what you're calling general population?
In general, the state formula accounts for that, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so when you look at the page that has the DESE page that breaks down the categories, this page here, the one that has the category we're in, across the top, you'll see preschool, kindergarten, junior middle school, high school, vocational, special ed and district, English language learners, and so on. Low income is on there as well. And then each of those students, so it has the total number in the foundation. Where do the students go? Remember, students can go multiple places. But in general, and then what money is accounted for in the state budget. So if you look at number 13, low income, the bottom line is 14.8 million of a foundation budget that comes there. Now, when you look at our low income status, the formula for us, is 51.66%, or low income group category 9. 51.66% is what the state is noting as our low income students. And so when you look at your high needs, you're encompassing low income, special education, ELL, so on.
To give you context of the question, it's terms and equality for the general education for the general education of the general population versus a high needs. And I know at the time, because I watched the school committee meeting, you said it's a difficult subject, but as you know, sometimes difficult subjects, as long as we speak respectfully to each other, really does need to be addressed. And I know you also noted some of these high needs really shouldn't be in the school system. It should have something to do with insurance as well. So I'm just asking you, what is the taxpayer supposed to do? I mean, we're looking for equality here of education, and we're dealing with a budget which is limited funds. I know everybody would like unlimited funds, so wouldn't I, but that's not the case.
So let me answer this from two perspectives. It's a great question, actually. It is a difficult conversation because it can get very into different situations. Let's just talk about what is a medical model and an educational model. Our model is the educational model to provide those specialty services that give students access to the curriculum, teaching and learning. That's the mandate that we have versus the medical model. And that's where the insurance fight us, and we'll never win that battle, if you will. We do some Medicaid reimbursement that does go back to the general fund, about, I want to say anywhere, 300, 400,000, somewhere in that ballpark. But in general, that's the biggest, one of the biggest things. Most folks, as I said earlier, and I talked about OT-PT speech, most folks don't understand, many folks don't even understand that we provide that service. Just because of, the education model that we in, but we are required to. And that's also for students potentially on a 504, which is part of IDEA for a student who potentially has an issue that may be more of a physical situation, if you will, or ADHD is also sometimes found in that category. The reason why Stoughton receives the SOA money that it does is solely based on the 3,800 students that attend Stoughton Public Schools. That's how the formula works. Right now, the formula is trying to do one thing over 7 years for approximately 120 communities, of which Stoughton is one of them. It is to give Stoughton a fair piece of the pie that it has not received and bring it up to date without putting it on the local taxpayer. That's what SOA is trying to do. Like it or not, or agree with it or not, that's the promise of the Student Opportunity Act.
But the concern about that is that in essence, it's a subsidy that's going to go away, but the cost is still going to be foundational, which means it's still going to be at the taxpayer expense without that SOA funds, because that's ending in 2 years.
So there are discussions already taking place around what the future would look like with this, because there's a very clear understanding that just, quote, closing this out is going to cause tremendous strain on local budgets because of this tremendous stress. However, remember that the foundation budget is a number that stays there and it's built upon year after year. So at some point, we may only see 1.5% increase, and we'll have to deal with 1.5% increase. Believe me, I've done that. And what do you have to do? You have to take a look at all of your expenses, and you cut and you cut and you cut, or you have other discussions.
Well, that's my concern there in terms of the pressure that it's putting on the taxpayers for cost of education escalating and that's related to mandates. And so along that line, that leads me into the next piece. When we hear that the school has added a tab this year and asked department heads, put all your wants, all your needs, whatever it is, it's just where that was at a school committee meeting this year. And the concern for the taxpayer is, now let's just say that goes to the 2.8 that came in. That again, I always like to give context of why I'm asking what I'm asking, is how that could have funded other items. In other words, like you said, when push comes to shove, we might have to cut in persons or parents' individual, desires. I mean, like, again, let me repeat, we all want everything, but we can't always get everything. That's the context of the question.
I can't speak, I won't speak to anything, but I can tell you this. I said at a town meeting, I'll say it again. Which department made cuts last year? We got an increase. Yes, we did. But we still made cuts. 17 people went out the door. My unemployment line item went up. I had to figure out that during the year. So we have made cuts. We're in the second year of potentially having to make cuts. We're not in the first year of it. We're in the second year of it, if it comes to that. I hope it doesn't. But 17 situations of giving services to students are no longer here. And yes, I always have to fight the battle. I understand that we've received an increase. We are thankful for that increase, but that increase did not provide level services to the school department.
Through you, Vaughn, just last point on this is just how exponentially more the school increases are even over the municipal side, given all the municipal needs as well, and that we're all under a limited budget. That's the context of the point. And sometimes families have to cut severely what they desire to spend money on or want to spend money on. So we would like to see all our town departments, not just you, the school department, keep that in mind when.
Well, I think we are, Ms. Lyons, because, I mean, the school committee last night just added fees to families who want to take transportation in order to be able to not offset cuts somewhere else. So I do think that the school department is doing its share of trying to get there. But I will tell you that between the mandates, one of the things that I did in my last district, and maybe it's time to do it here before I go, is I created what is a mandate budget. Every single thing that is mandated by federal and state government, every position, every purchase, and all of that. And what we saw time over time, year after year, was double-digit percentage increases in mandates and flat numbers in general education. Very difficult conversation because that leads to other conversations. But what it does is just shows you the promise of public education, which is to teach all children. I don't have a choice. I don't want that choice, for the record. I want to reach every student that we can. We have a direct responsibility to any and all students who are, quote, residing within the boundaries of Stoughton, regardless of all that other stuff that we've had to deal with in the last 18 months. We're still going to have that issue in terms of the issues that are before us. And it's in some cases, I'm happy that after being here for 2 years, I'm not coming back for a supplemental budget in the fiscal year and just finishing off my year as much as we can with what we have. I haven't asked for a supplemental budget in terms of some of the costs that we had to absorb. Like I just said, I'm picking up a $50,000 tab for a tuition increase that is not even in the budget. You take that 50, you add the 31, I'm already $81,000 into the hole before you even considered my budget. Already there. And so we already know that for July 1st, the school committee is going to have to do some moving around for us to have a balanced budget on July 1st to start the school year. Balanced budget at the end of the school year as well, which I believe we will be at once again.
All right, thank you very much for that. Do we have any other questions from the committee on the Stoughton Public Schools?
Hi,
Carolyn.
Hi, it is more a comment. We talk a lot about the mandates, and there's always discussion, if we didn't have the Chapter 70 money, which is this currently known as the SOA money, is that going to affect us in the long run? When ed reform was passed, I happened to be doing an internship at the Center for Law and Education. And the reason that ed reform was passed was because there was a Supreme Judicial Court decision that said there was a state constitutional right for public education, and for the state had an obligation to educate all of its students. And it there was a court case that found that the state was not doing that, especially as to districts, the inequity between districts, because the public school system was funded primarily at that time or solely by local contributions and local property taxes. So there was inequities. And the Chapter 70, in whatever form with the foundation budget, has been the state legislature's attempt to try to address that by providing, mandating a foundation budget and providing what they think each community needs based on a formula that very few people fully understand, but some people that work in finance in the Department of Education do. So it's the mandate may be a mandate, but the mandate is a constitutional mandate. So, as we have a state constitution, we do not exist as a community without the state government. All of our power comes from the state. All of our obligation, we have the same obligations as the state, and we wouldn't, as the state as a whole, wouldn't exist without the Constitution. So, mandates make it sound like it's something we just chose to do, as opposed to something that a Constitution recognizes essential for the survival of our Commonwealth.
Well, thank you very much for that, Carolyn. Elliot, do you have a question?
I do, thank you, Mr. Chair. You had alluded to medication, and could you tell me about how many students, or what percentage, if you will, are taking or given medication for ADHD, and is it going up, down, or level?
Excuse me, I don't know that that's relevant to the budget. If you really feel the need to answer.
No, my answer will be general. I will not get into details on number of students and all of that. I will tell you that in general, the utilization of our nursing services continues to be an area of growth. I'll leave it at that.
Thank you. Any other questions? Jonna?
Thank you, Vaughn. Dr. Beata, I just was curious. You said that the two hotels are closing down, and I know you're having in the budget the redistricting study. How does that come into play with that?
In terms of the shelters, or?
Well, yeah, because if you've got less, if they're closing down and then there's going to be less students, does that still impact the redistricting?
Yes.
And if it does, how? Because I understand basically you want to distribute the children around, but
we're going to cover redistricting when we get to the Capitol.
Sorry, that's fine. Okay, thanks.
Do we have any other questions from the committee on the Stoughton Public Schools budget? Linda.
Thanks, Vaughn. This is to you, Dr. Beata, on the superintendent's office, page 59 in your budget. There's a line item that states set aside for salary increases. Wouldn't the salary increases be built into the budget? So it goes from, it's an increase of 150,000.
That is solely for union negotiations, non-management. It's literally putting aside money for the purposes of negotiating with the unions we're currently negotiating with.
And what if it's not used, or what if it's not? Okay.
I'm in negotiations, so I'm going to stay away from answering that question.
I understand.
Thank you.
Yep, you're welcome. And there's also, contracted services, kind of just a blank item for 180,000.
Yeah, same idea.
Same idea.
Same
okay.
idea.
Thank you.
All right, thanks for that. Any other questions from the committee on the school budget? Okay, questions, comments from the public on the Stoughton Public Schools budget? Cynthia, please identify yourself for the record.
Cynthia Walsh, 1096 Park Street. It appears, especially in transportation, that what happens to Stoughton with one bid is happening everywhere in Massachusetts. Has a superintendent's association considered approaching the Attorney General to investigate whether there's some sort of collusion, and that the companies agree they've kind of divvied up the state, and everybody gets a section, and that's why there's only one bid in Brockton and one bid in Canton and one bid in Stoughton?
Mr. Chairman, through you to Ms. Walsh, I can assure you, Ms. Walsh, that various groups and organizations have noted to the powers that be a significant concern of at least the last 30 years of this.
All right, thank you. Any other questions, comments? Marina, please identify yourself for the record. Please, there's a mic up there somewhere.
Good evening. Thank you so much for letting me speak. Marina Ryan, 72 Copperwood. I just have a question about students' increase in Stoughton schools, where the increase come from and how you calculate the increase. So we don't see the numbers that actually decrease, meaning students leave, right, too. So we don't see that number. We only see the increase. So how you calculate and why don't you show the decrease versus increase in the budget?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, to the gentlewoman asking the question, everything to do with this budget is grounded on the number of students that are here on October 1st by state statute. So that is how we get to our budget. It's grounded on October 1st. There are, as I said earlier, there's constant change that takes place. But that is how the foundation budget is established for every public school.
All right, thank you for that.
Yeah, so I've heard that a lot of students come from different towns like Brockton. So, yeah, so we don't just have Stoughton locals, and that's the increase come from.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, that's an inaccurate statement. We have a full utilization of our residency office anytime we get a phone call. So if you know of somebody and you'd like to share that information with me, we're happy to follow up. That happens out of my office on a daily basis. We shadow, if you will, streets to see if people are coming out of the correct address. We're currently actually reviewing 10% of the student population by statute to make sure that they actually live at the address. We also do that for the students attending Southeastern, Norfolk Aggie, and for their residency. So could there be somebody? Sure. But the fact of the matter is, and we do have some legal obligations as well through court order. Other than that, though, we do a really good job of trying to make sure that the students that are here are our residents.
All right, thank you very much for that. Okay, thank you. Any other questions, comments from the public on the Stoughton Public Schools budget? Hearing none, we'll go to the next item on the agenda. We're going to Article 30, which is School Department Capital. Item 1, firewall replacement. Would you like to present this?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, through you to the committee. The request for $168,338 is for the firewall, which is expiring in April of 26. And of course, as you know, failure to replace the firewall results in significant issues, including the problem of data breaches and cyber attacks. We just recently had a cyber attack through one of our companies, if you will. They were the ones that were hacked. We weren't hacked, but we ended up having potentially information taken. That is under federal investigation, state investigation, FBI investigation. It's my understanding actually that the company was involved in getting that material back, that process that I think some of you have probably heard in the news. But what we're doing now here is our firewall, the one we're responsible for here, is we're trying to kick it up to what would be the next level because of the expiration date.
All right, thank you for that. Any questions, Carolyn?
Through you, what schools does that firewall cover? Does it cover all of them?
All.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Linda, you have a question?
Is that just a 1-year subscription?
No, that'll take us out approximately 5 years.
5 years, great, thanks.
And I'll only say that with a little carrot that the biggest issue that happens is we don't really know what the next technology is that's coming up. And so that could have an impact. But right now.
All right, any other questions? Lisa?
Hi, so did I hear right on that? Is our existing firewall still functioning, or it hasn't reached its end of its life? Is that a correct statement, yes or no? And then if it's a yes, if it's a no, is that why we're replacing it for better protection in terms of threat level?
Our firewall in general expires in April of 26. And because of the process that we have here, we're trying to move on that process. It takes a few months to do this. It's not just a one-day turnaround. So I want to be very clear. Our firewall is working. It's coming out to its, if you will, end of lifetime. And we are going to the next level, if you will, of the next needed firewall.
In 2026 is when
Correct.
it's end of useful life.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
You bet.
Okay, any other questions from the committee on item 1 of Article 30, School Department Capital, which is the firewall replacement, $168,338? Okay, hearing none. Questions or comments from the public on item 1 of Article 30, which is firewall replacement, part of the School Department Capital article? Hearing none. Next item on the agenda, we'll go to item 2 of the School Department Capital, which is wireless access points, $461,388.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you, as you know, everything that we do on a daily basis, from teaching and learning to the security of our buildings and all of that, is done through wireless access points. And so what we're trying to do is our life in this is 2026. This is a longer turnaround time to implement. And that's the reason why we're asking for it now, because this is truly months upon months of changeovers that has to take place, including looking at which company we're utilizing, what type of updates will be happening, and so on and so forth. So again, this is kind of like to your earlier question, Ms. Lyons, the end of life is coming to some of these things, and we're doing the next generation, if you will, of the upgrades. Typically, these access points last a little longer in general. But again, it really depends on the utilization of them. Right now, the average student is utilizing 3 types of, if you will, digital computers, from phone to computer to tablet, on average 3 per student in access points. By the way, it's interesting that wireless access points, the highest need, this is kind of an interesting statement. When do you think is the highest need? I'm not asking you to answer this. The highest need, right after the holidays, everybody gets a new one. And in January, our access points go ballistic because all these new gadgets that kids are utilizing. So just to let you, again, this is end of life, trying to do the next upgrade so that we don't have classrooms and spaces that don't have access.
All right, thank you for that. Any questions from the committee on this? Linda?
With approval, would you be able to get this done during the summer months if you were approved now, so it's rearing and ready to go September?
Yeah, so the goal here is the process is that we would start working on July 1 right away. If you approve it, then town meeting, we will start the process right away. And it takes a significant amount of time because we have to take a look at every access point. Are they going to be moved? Is there a place that's missing one that should have one because it's going to lead to better access? That's all part of the planning. So we would go through that internally and then utilizing the third party that gets the opportunity to work with us and then do the implementation. But yes, that's always the target time.
All right, thank you. Any other questions? Lisa?
Hi, this is just a general question related to these in terms of, I know the wireless would be considered a one-time purchase. That's why it's under capital. But what's the dividing line between a significant maintenance item versus it going into capital?
Yeah, it's a great question. So one of the things that I think will come out of our capital plan is an opportunity for us to take certain things and consider them as year to year, every other year type of stuff. I've done this before where I'm able to really see the items that we need and utilize. So what is the cutoff? Is it $10,000 with a lifespan of 5 years, or is it $100,000 with a lifespan of 10 years, right? We need to have those further discussions, because that's when we, any department, I think, but I'll just speak for mine, the one I'm responsible for, we would start to take a look at how do you put some of this stuff on a on-year, off-year maintenance type program.
Okay, and just a second follow-up question. So also watching the school committee, a school committee member asked when you were discussing the article for the capital plan, how long would it take to get the capital plan? And the answer was 2 months. Now, we approved that back in November, the capital plan, and we're in March now. So I was wondering if you had any clarification as to why the taxpayers would possibly have to wait until next July to get a town combined capital plan.
Let's try to keep the questions relative to the
It's very
article at hand.
relevant
It is
because
not
it relates
relevant.
to the budget and capital, and we're a finance committee, Vaughn.
We are discussing the wireless access points part
I believe
of Article.
Dr. Bayetta was trying to answer me, Vaughn, in terms
Thank you
of
very
the
much.
2 months.
Thank you very much for pointing out what Dr. Bayette is doing. I'm well
Okay,
aware.
I'm trying to
I'm trying to keep-
educate myself as well as the taxpayers, Vaughn.
And I'm trying to keep this meeting on track. But
Well,
thank
I
you,
think
Lisa.
we're doing
Lisa,
pretty good at
Lisa,
9 o'clock.
Lisa, please stop interrupting. Dr. Bayetta, I understand that you expressed an interest in answering this question, which is not relevant, but if you feel free to answer this.
Mr. Yanokian, thank you. For the sake of just putting it out there, I received the funding in November. I have to pass in articles by January. No way that can be done.
I'm sorry, could you say that again?
The timeline for the budget process is I have to get stuff done by December and January. I would not have been able to turn around an approval in November, go out to bid, do a bid, go out to bid, which takes a month in itself, hire the company, have the company come in and be able to have articles done for this town meeting. So that's why we're saying July 1st of this year, we will have a capital plan ready to go.
Okay, so maybe I need some help understanding this. We at the town meeting approved the spending of that. Then does that have to go back to town meeting?
That is not where we are on this agenda.
Oh, I'm trying, Vaughn,
I understand that you are trying to understand this.
do you not know the answer?
I am trying to stick to the agenda. We are talking about the wireless access points.
Okay,
part of the capital.
so then again, Vaughn, that's why I keep asking to have at least other matters or
Thank you very much
something
for your
else
comments. Lisa,
so we can
thank you very much for
clarify
your
what we're
comments.
talking
Thank you
about.
very much for your comments. Let's get back to the agenda. Wireless access points, part of the school department capital, Article 30. Heidi, do you have a question on this?
So are we having somebody come in from a company to find out where the high and low wireless access points are?
It's part of the process, yes.
Okay. Because I was just thinking you could send a survey out to the kids and they could tell you.
Yeah, very true. Very, very true.
All right, any other questions from the committee on the wireless access points, part of Article 30, school department capital?
Correct.
Hearing none, any questions or comments from the public on the wireless access points, which is item 2 on Article 30, school department capital? Hearing none, thank you very much. We'll go to the next item, which is item 3, Article 30, which is a redistricting study for $90,000.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, through you to the committee. So as the committee is probably aware of, the district is redistricting its elementary schools, potentially pre-K to 5, let's just say K to 5, with 2 different scenarios. The first scenario will have an answer by April 8th, which is the vote on a new elementary school. And so the redistricting with that would encompass the closure of the South School, the opening of a new school in South Stoughton, the repurposing of the Wilkins as the early childhood center / administration, and the Jones School also being eventually closed. thereby taking overall one building, 2 older buildings off, but 1 building net. So that's one process. The second process is if the vote does not go positively, the district is still redistricting with the closure of the South School and keeping the Jones open, and the Wilkins would be maintained as an elementary school along with the Dodd, the Gibbons, and the Hanson. In both of these cases, we would be redistricting one to with a new school option, the other with the modular classrooms that we would have to do because, as you know, the South School renovation is not an option based on ADA compliance, fire code, and all the other stuff that has been debated for a number of years. What we did is we utilized looking at redistrictings that have been taking place in like-sized districts of 3,000 to 4,000 students. I think one of them was a little over 4,000. And we looked at what those bids looked like and what they were trying to do. And those bids came on average on a low of 90,000 and a high of 135,000. So we're coming in at up to $90,000 to be expanded to be able to do this. This is bringing in a third party. What we do is all the software that they have and all of that stuff where they literally are taking all of our information and putting where are the students currently and where are they going to be when you make this change. And you have that approximately 9 months to a year ahead of schedule so that parents can be notified about the significant change of where their children is going to be educated if there's a change. And so we're requesting it as a one-time capital item to put it out and hire a third party to be able to provide the school committee and the superintendent the best opportunity for what redistricting would look like.
All right, thank you very much for that. Do we have any questions? Mark?
I just wanted to get this straight. It's only going to be one study that you're going to do. You're going to do it after the vote.
Correct. We will not expand onto, as you know, you may have heard that there's a redistricting committee in place. I have slowed down that committee until April purposely. Why work? Why hire? Why expand money if we know on April 8th after 8 o'clock what the end result is?
Okay. Thank you very much.
You bet.
All right, thank you for that. Jonna?
Yes, thank you, Vaughn. I wanted to go back to my other question that I asked before, since this is the appropriate place to ask, what impact the closing of the 2 hotels will have on the fact that you need to redistrict?
So the impact there is that as a shelter at that time, we knew that we had X number of students that are at that one location. Right, or in this case, 2 locations. So now we don't have to consider either of those 2 locations as part of our redistricting because there aren't kids there. Now, that doesn't mean that those students didn't move somewhere else in town, number one. We just don't know that yet. And number 2, we have an increase in enrollment taking place anyways. So it's one way or the other. We have to redistrict because we don't have the spaces at the elementary school. We need more spaces to be able to educate students, including keeping students in district, and that's why we have to do the redistricting.
Okay, just so I'm clear, the redistricting has to do with the fact that let's say the new school passed. That's why you need to know how to redistribute?
So that would be one.
Okay.
And then the other one would be if the project doesn't pass and we're adding modulars to the other schools and we're closing the South, we still have to redistrict the district to see what would be the best and closest school to students to actually attend. You're not just taking the 308 kids at the South and moving them somewhere else.
And why not? Why are you incorporating everyone?
Because of I can't create certain types of schools. I can't create straight low performing schools. I can't create schools with certain demographics. I have to go through a process to show as much balance as we can as part of redistricting.
Okay, my last question is why modulars? Who's talking about modulars? Why is that the only option?
That's the only option on the table.
Yeah, why is it the only option?
I don't see any other option.
Thank you.
I don't know if you have a thought on that. I'm happy to meet with you to discuss that. But the problem that we have right now is we don't have the space.
All right, thank you very much. Lisa, you have a question?
Just to pick up on the other option that you were just mentioning would be to build a different designed school that is less expensive. In other words, when you build any project, you can have a high end, a middle, and a low.
Item we're discussing is a redistricting study, part of Article 30. So do you have a question regarding the redistricting
I'm
study?
following up on the comment
Okay.
right here. So that there would be another option, so that there wouldn't have to be such a drastic redistricting, nor would there have to be town-wide modulars. At worst case, building a more practically designed school.
We will
you
stick
could
to
have,
the agenda, which is redistricting study. So please have a
I
question.
think I made my point. There is another
Thank you, Lisa.
option that's not being
Thank you,
addressed.
Lisa. Do you have any other questions regarding the redistricting study? Any other questions from the committee on
I made my
redistricting
point.
study? Part of Article 30, School Department Capital. Linda?
With redistricting, do we anticipate like a busing nightmare? Yeah, okay. So on top of everything else, we got that.
By then we may need somebody to help us with that if you're available. Transportation in a situation, in this particular situation is very interesting, and I'll tell you why. I'm going to go down two rows regardless if you agree or disagree. Just think of it this way for 1 second. If you go with a new school, you keep a building in South Stoughton. If you don't have a new school in this one situation, because I know what you're going to say, Ms. Lyons, you already said it, then we have no school in South Stoughton. So your redistricting isn't going in any type of a clockwise, counterclockwise. It's totally sideways, the way it would go. So yes, there are concerns on operational budgets when it comes to that, increases.
Okay, one quick question though. So say the project passes April 8th, are we still anticipating a busing crisis or a nightmare?
Nightmare is all going to depend on where the bodies end up.
Okay.
Right. And right now, I just don't have that information. I will tell you that one of the concerns is that our enrollment in the South School isn't what I call the deep south of town. Right. It's further down to that Brockton Easton line and not up towards Sumner, if you will. So that's going to be something we really have to take a look at because of the avenue of how far students would be if there isn't a school in South Stoughton.
All right, thank you for that. Heidi?
So going along with the busing, do we have a finite amount of buses that we use? Or would we have an opportunity to, like say we have 30 buses, would we need like 40 or 35?
We have 14 currently that we're utilizing. So the question is always going to be, what new created free busing do we do? In other words, how many more kids in K-6, if any, require free busing because they're at 2 miles? So that's one thing we have to address. And that would be part of our study because we have to look at, the school committee has to look at the foundation of our budget increase or flat based on that. So that would be one of the things that the school department would be looking at as part of the different choices of redistricting. So the school committee could end up with 2 different choices, 3 different choices, 4 different choices. There's as many as 5 out there. It all depends on how you decide to break down the town. And that's what it comes down to. And then you have to look at, in general, what I would call federal rights. You have to take a look at civil rights issues. You have to take a look at not creating a special education school, not creating an EL school, not creating a poverty school. And so you have to have all of those dynamics.
I just want to add too that our bus contract does allow us to add and subtract buses. I did ask this question last night before I signed it. So if we suddenly needed 30 buses, we could ask for it. It might be difficult. It is difficult to find bus drivers, but we could add a few more buses if we needed to go up to 16 or 18.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you for that. Chet, you have a question?
Thank you. Excuse me. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Hypothetically, April 8th, if it does not pass, and we have to go for modulars. Now, if we go for modules, I'm just asking a question. I'm not quite sure the answer. We'd have to go back to town meeting for appropriation of funds or for another, so we say debt exclusion?
Yeah, feasibility and design, first phase.
Yep.
And then actual outcome of that and what it looks like, the cost estimates, another vote of town meeting, and then potentially another debt exclusion or coming out of operational, whatever the decisions are of the powers that be.
Okay, so it comes to my question. If the modules don't pass, okay, then how's this redistricting going to work? In other words, we're going to have to redistrict no matter what. Is that correct?
We're going to have to look at redistricting no matter what, correct? The problem that we're going to have is the access of the South School.
Okay, so the $90,000 in this redistricting contract that we're looking for, how is that going to impact if both articles don't pass? I mean, through the town meeting.
So in other words, if April 8th is a no, we move to modulars become a no. How does the redistricting still take place?
Well, that's my question. Or with the $90,000, I guess my question is, I'm not phrasing it correctly, but if both don't pass, but we do 90,000, we're going to wait till after April 8th to, well, this is going to go to next year, but so I guess what I'm trying to make a point is, how is that redistricting going to work after both?
The best answer I can give you is we're in a pickle. And by that, what I mean is, what are our true options with a school that we really just can't renovate and doesn't have the educational purposes that it needs? And we're not going to be in the MSBA process. So I think at that point, it would be another, maybe Ms. Lyons has the answer with you're building a new elementary school just with operational funds, or you're building a smaller school, or whatever the case may be. You would have to go through that process.
In either way, we'd have to do redistricting.
And either way, we have to do redistricting because of the situations that I have in schools currently. So an example might be, and we've talked about this already once, at least once publicly, if not twice, we may be looking at very temporary modulars in the very near future because of the issues that we have at our schools. In other words, not even a modular plan, but something where we're taking a capital account and we're saying we're going to bring in 2 modulars because right now there's XYZ in that school that I have to offer and I can't.
Okay. Thank you very much for that. You good with that, Chet, the redistricting thing?
I just want to make sure that the $90,000, no matter what happens, it's still going to be used for redistricting somehow, some way.
Yes.
Is that correct? Okay.
That's correct.
I guess that's what I'm trying to get to. Thank you.
All right. Thank you for that, Chet. Any other questions on this? Linda?
Not to beat this busing thing like a dead horse, but say a child is redistricted out of the 2-mile range. Is that family going to be required to pay for busing because the town is redistricting?
Any of that is open for debate and discussion by the school committee, yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, so they're taken out of their district because we decide to redistrict. Now
Yep.
the family is responsible for the busing.
Happens a lot.
Okay.
Yep.
It's lousy.
It does.
Okay, thanks.
All right. Thank you for that. Any other questions on this? Lisa?
So I'd like to thank you, Dr. Bayetta, for acknowledging that there is at least a third option. And
I didn't acknowledge it. I said it was your idea.
okay.
That's a difference.
Okay. We have feasibility money. They looked at these. There's different levels. And if we can reduce the amount of redistricting in town and still be cognizant of taxpayers, I'm thinking that was a win-win for everyone. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. Any other questions from the committee on item 3? The school department capital, Article 30, redistricting study, $90,000. Hearing none. Questions or comments from the public? Item 3. Marina, please step forward and identify yourself for the record.
Marina Ryans, 72 Copperwood. Things become more clear. So despite of the school, South School, so you've planned the redistricting for $90,000 in the budget of this year. So what about the modulars? So the expenses also in the budget? And why are we talking then about modulars if it's not in the budget?
Neither is my budget also does not include a new school. It's an operational budget for the students currently in it, and the new school vote and our modulars are separate topics for discussion that folks will have to make a decision on. Here's what the facts are. The facts are that the South School needs to be closed. That's a fact.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much for that. Any other questions or comments from the public? Item 3, redistricting study, part of Article 30, School Department Capital. Hearing none, thank you very much for your presentation tonight, Dr. Baeta.
Mr. Chairman, through you, the remainder of the committee, thank you for the conversation. I appreciate the conversation very much tonight. Thanks again.
Thanks. Have a wonderful evening. I'd like to thank the members of the school committee. And
I'd like to make a motion to continue the public hearing until tomorrow at 7 o'clock here.
so March 13th, 7 o'clock.
March 13th
At the Great Hall.
at the Great Hall.
Okay, and we have a second on that? Who's the second? Linda? Linda's the second?
Linda, yep.
Okay, motion to continue the public hearing. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Hearing none. Looking for a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Chet, you have the second on this one, Chet? Yeah, I guess. Chet gets the second. Okay. Motion and a second on the floor. All in favor to adjourn? All opposed? Hearing none. This meeting is adjourned. I'd like to thank everyone for watching. Have a wonderful evening. Thanks everyone for attending, and drive safe.